Hi, everyone. Thank you once again for taking the time to watch our video. And because it's the month of love, we are going to be actually talking about love and money, looking at all these different money personality traits and how they could cause potential conflict in your relationship and how, of course, to resolve that conflict. All right. So, as normal, I will be switching off my camera and then starting to share so that we can be able to actually start this lesson. All righty, here we go. Okay, and just go there. Here we go. And of course, love and money. Okay, so why it matters in relationships, okay? So of course, guys, remember, there's nothing you can do in life without money, okay? So there's no way it's not going to impact the relationship because when it comes to money, we need money to live. Okay. So of course, unfortunately, people have different money personalities, and it can cause conflict because we are different people. And instead of it causing conflict, we need to look at it from a positive point of view where we're able to actually find some form of common ground, right? And improve communication and teamwork when it comes to money matters. And so we going to have different balanced approaches to ensure that both parties are respected and complement each other instead of actually causing form of conflict. So, of course, we're going to be going through all the different money personalities and then look at the potential conflicts and how you can resolve that conflict. So, firstly, we look at the saver. So, of course, yes, um, priority is always saving. So people who love saving money would always look at having some form of an emergency fund, right? Because they feel a bit of security and financial stability when they have a bit of a cushion. I know that normally it was like 3 months, having about 3 months worth of your salary saved up. But in this economic climate, I mean, 6 months is more of a safer bet, right? So they might also have, struggle with spending or experience or have, challenges when it comes to taking financial risks. So those are sometimes are some of the challenges that savers might face. And then we look at a spender. So, of course, a person who likes spending money would be enjoying, spending money for luxury items, gifts, experiences in the form of vacations and so forth. And because they find joy in using money to enhance lifestyle and happiness, okay? And I mean, these are fun people because, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody needs to understand that we need to work towards something, okay? Be it a particular financial goal, okay? Be it that you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to go on a holiday. That requires a level of spending, and that's part of the enjoyment, be it you are investing in experiences, right? Where you go out, you're enjoying with people, you have adventures and so forth, or you want to actually buy tangible things where you are going to be spending money on items like houses, clothing, cars, and so forth, right? So the spender, appreciates spending the money and seeing the joy in life in actually using the money that they work for so hard, right? And some of the difficulties they may have is, of course, budgeting and impulse control, okay? Because sometimes the spenders could potentially be overspending or don't have a system in place as to how much money am I planning to save to actually spend. So they could be struggling with the concept of budgeting, and that's where the challenge they could have as a spender when it comes to this money personality. All right, and then an investor. So, of course, a person who's an investor, different from a saver, because an investor looks at a long term. So they don't mind taking financial risks. They have some form of strategies that they have in place to be able to actually make these risks. But, the nice thing is that they're normally calculated risks, right? And they focus on long term gains. when they're making these type of decisions. And unfortunately, some of the challenges could be that they overlook, short-term financial needs, for future growth. So instead of focusing on having an emergency fund, they could value having a long-term investment. So yes, it's all good and well to think about your pension, but you also need to be able to have what is it, an emergency fund saved up for situations where you have some form of an emergency. Does not make sense for you to have a vehicle breakdown and it's not covered by the insurance, and now you need to go tap into a long-term investment instead of you actually having something saved up for emergencies. So that's one of the challenges that investors have, right? And then the last one is the avoider. So there's interesting money personality, people who would tend to avoid discussions about money or anything that has to do with, talking about money, all right? So they struggle with budgeting, debt management, or planning for the future because having a conversation maybe just gives them a bit of anxiety. Okay. And so, unfortunately, they often feel financial stress due to the lack of engagement. And, avoiding is not a good thing because, I mean, you could be in a financial hole. You find yourself in a financial hole and you don't actually find ways to get yourself out of that hole because you don't talk about your finances. Or you could have prevented the situation had you spoken about your finances more or tried to plan better. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen because you always avoid these type of discussions. So those are some of the challenges that are faced by avoiders. Okay. So now we're going to be looking at pairing these couples, right? Be it someone who is dating a person who's a saver, right? You're a spender and you're dating someone who is a saver, or you're a saver dating a spender. How do you navigate this type of relationship? How do you balance the two? Okay. So firstly, the conflict will always arise because, I mean, the saver may feel a bit anxious when it comes to the spender's habits, because the spender would always want to spend, of course, and the saver might feel a bit restricted. The spender will feel a bit restricted because, I mean, the saver always wants to save and save and save and not actually enjoy life. So how do we find common ground and balancing these two personalities? Okay, so firstly, let's agree on a budget, right? That could include both savings and guilt-free spending. So what I say is that with the budgeting, we always want to plan for what we need to actually use the funds for. And we can also use a budget to plan to save towards something that we want to actually purchase or do, right? Or spend the money in whichever manner. So if we want to go on holiday, right, we'll have a budget and we'll be able to save towards that holiday versus waking up tomorrow and be like, oh, let's go on a holiday, right? Because now there's a bit of thought process and planning towards it, and it just puts us on a better financial position. So you see how these two personalities then can complement each other in this instance. And then, of course, introducing what I like to call is fun money. Okay, ideally, the concept here is that any relationship, when you start having these conversations about money, we need to have a conversation about what are our limitations, okay? And what that means is that we need to be in agreement as to how much money can I spend without having to talk to you as my partner or consult or say anything. So that's where the fun money comes in, where you can spend that amount of money with no questions asked. So having some form of a budget or a limit. So for instance, if you say that 5,000 Rand is the limit. So if you spend anything below 5,000 Rand, that's the money that you can spend. You can do whatever you want with it. There'll be no questions asked. But the minute the amount goes above 5,000 Rand, then we need to have a conversation. Okay. So if someone wants to borrow money from you, okay, they want to borrow 1,000 Rand, they want to borrow 500 Rand, 200 Rand. There's no need for you to consult me or say anything to me because that's below the threshold that we have actually communicated with each other. But the minute the amount goes above the threshold, that's a conversation, right? So these type of boundaries help in these conversations and situations to prevent a situation where a person finds themselves where there's a decision that has been made and they were not consulted, right? There's a big financial decision. Then we don't want to encourage behaviors where people then also feel a bit restricted, as if, oh, I need to actually report every cent I spend, to my partner. And then that also then creates this negative relationship with money when it comes to the parties involved in that particular relationship. So by having a set amount, right, as a threshold, that then gives us a bit of freedom and a bit of leeway. Even though we're still in this partnership and we're working as a team, we still feel that we can make certain financial decisions, right? Without having to consult the other party. But the instant the amount becomes above the threshold, then that's going to require a particular conversation. Okay. So that's the whole point when it comes to fund money, because it's also trying to prevent a situation where people feel as if they are being controlled or restricted, or feel as if they need to have every cent, accounted for, right? Because you also don't want to have that type of relationship, because a lot of people might feel like, oh, I don't want to be in a relationship if I need to then tell a person every cent I spend, right? So having this concept of fund money is good because it gives us the best of both worlds, right? And it helps you make sure that you are not having a negative relationship with money together, but having a good relationship with money together and having good experiences, right? So when we have these big purchases, these are things that we want to talk about, okay, as a couple. And then the saver and investor, right? So look at the situation where, of course, the saver prefers security and low risk because they could be saving towards an emergency fund and wanting to think of situations that, okay, in the next 6 months, how our finances are going to look, versus an investor who will say, actually, what is going to happen in the next 5 years? So the potential risk here and conflict is that, the saver could be risk averse versus an investor who's willing to take financial risks for long-term growth. So how they could meet common ground is that allocating a portion of savings towards investments, while keeping an emergency fund intact. I always say that when you're saving, right, and investing, you need to break it down, right? Have short, medium, and long term. So the long term, that's we talk about the investments, right? Anything longer than 3 years. Then your medium term, these are the kind of savings account we open if we want to save towards a deposit for a house. We want to save towards a holiday. We want to save towards a deposit for a vehicle, right? We want to redo the kitchen. We want to do something, in the next 6 months or a year. That's more for the medium term. That's what I would say, the medium term. Then short term savings is your emergency fund. If we have a car breakdown and we don't have the finances to pay for the vehicle repair because the insurance is not covering it, there's a death in the family, we need to contribute and we don't have the finances, that's where the emergency fund comes in. Okay. So having that split of your finances actually makes it better because you have best of both worlds. You are still investing, but you are also taking into consideration, short-term savings and medium-term savings, and you don't have to expose yourself to too much risk as a couple. Okay. That also creates some form of financial stability and is healthy when it comes to creating balance and wealth building within the relationship. All right. And this is a great opportunity for the saver to learn about calculated risk and the investor to also appreciate the importance of stability in the form of having some form of an emergency fund. Okay. And if we look at the investor and the spender, okay, so of course, I mean, one person always wants to spend, the next person wants to invest in terms of the long term. And unfortunately, the conflict will arise, of course, because the spender enjoys immediate gratification and the investor prioritizing, setting money aside for long-term goals. And the spender could feel a bit restricted, right? And the investor could feel like the spender is wasteful. Okay. How can we find common ground when it comes to these two personalities? Firstly, we create, a spending plan. That's the nice thing about investors because they have a plan when it comes to putting money aside. So When we have a spending plan, that allows us to be able to enjoy, however, having a plan towards that enjoyment. And the spender can also use this opportunity to teach the investor that making money is not just about putting it and stashing it away, but you need to be able to live life and enjoy. So having a plan as to how we're going to be enjoying this money together then just makes it easier for both personalities to shine. Okay. Then, of course, having some form of milestones, right, to reward responsible investing with a planned spending. So, if, for example, we're planning a particular holiday, where we can be able to use maybe the interest from this investment to go on holiday or buy a particular item that we wanted to buy for us to enjoy as a couple, this is where we get best of both worlds. Okay. And then the investor can encourage smarter spending habits with the spender, in the sense that for example, taking into consideration situations where there's specials, there's discounts. That's where the investor could say, hey, actually, maybe consider, we want to buy new furniture, we want to buy new appliances for the household. This is the perfect time to go and buy these appliances, which is maybe on a Black Friday or Manic Monday. I think that's, yes, where they have all these different appliances and so forth on special. Then those, are planned expenses and planned spending habits, which then helps the spender also learn a bit more from the investor and vice versa. Okay. And then we look at a saver and an avoider. So, of course, the potential conflict in this kind of a relationship is that, the saver may get frustrated by the avoider because they don't want to have these conversations about money. The saver could say, "Hey, we need to save. If we want to go on holiday this December, we need to start saving now." And the avoider could be like, "No, actually, I don't want to actually talk about this right now. Why can't we just talk about it maybe later in the year," right? Because they just want to prolong or they want to prolong avoiding this type of conversation as much as they can. Okay. Or a situation where there's a death in the family, now they need to contribute towards this death, and the saver is like, yeah, I mean, we do have money saved aside for emergencies, but we don't have enough because you have been avoiding this conversation for such a long time. I've been saying we should increase our savings, but you've been avoiding the topic. So, that's not the time for us to be having those kind of conversations. When we find ourselves in a situation where we need to be able to raise funds at that point in time, the issue that needs to be solved is raising the funds. It's not about blaming who and trying to establish who's to blame in that particular situation, right? So, striking a balance between this type of personality is, firstly, having a stress-free environment to have this conversation, because a person who avoids financial discussions, because it kind of brings a bit of anxiety and stresses them out. So the best way is to approach the situation from a point of view where you are making it a bit more lighter, a nice conversation that they look forward to having, not something they dread having because it's all serious and tense. We're sitting at the table with an exam pad and a pen, making creating our budget, and everything is all stressed and tense. How about having the conversation while we're taking a walk? Having the conversation while we're having dinner, having a conversation while we're shopping, right? While we're watching a movie, while we're binge watching a series. Do you understand? Having conversations, having these type of conversations in a stress-free environment does make the conversation better, and it helps the avoider relax and want to engage in the conversation. Okay. So stress-free money check-ins is very important. Okay. And then of course, once we've established, these boundaries and guidelines in terms of our budget as a couple and how we plan to save and spend our money, then we can automate savings and paying bills and so forth. We're delegating responsibilities. Okay. This is the best time for the saver to take the lead on planning, but you also should involve the avoider in key decisions, because we also don't want to have a situation where one person is making all the financial decisions and the other just needs to go with it. That is also very unhealthy, right? We need to find a balance and come together as a couple and work together towards a common goal, right? So no man left behind. Okay. The spender and the avoider. So this type of a relationship, right? Um, the investor and the avoider. That's the next one. So the spender, yeah, sorry, the spender and the avoider. The spender may overspend and the avoider may ignore financial issues, which leads to debt or financial instability, because the person who spends wants to always spend the money. And the person who's avoiding, they always avoid the spender's shopping habits. You can see that, oh, this person bought new clothes again. This person bought this, they bought a new car without talking to me. And then instead of you saying something, you avoid the situation, right? And that does not help, because you can find yourselves in a financial hole. So, how these two personalities can find common ground is that they can use a tools, right? Budgeting apps, tracking tools to be able to track their spending and saving. That way, they try to make financial decisions, make these stressful financial decisions better by finding tools to help them in this kind of a situation. Once they've found common ground in terms of their budget, then they can automate savings, of course, so that they can increase their financial security as a couple. And then keeping conversations light. This goes back to us talking about how important it is to have these type of conversations in a stress-free environment. Instead of you sitting at a table and everything is tense, let's take a walk. Let us let's go for a drive. Let's watch a movie. Let's have this conversation over dinner, because that's a stress-free environment, right? We don't want to create tension when it comes to talking about money, and then it's going to create a situation where there's this negative connotation or relationship with money that we have as a couple. Okay, so we want to avoid that by all means. And the last one is the investor and the avoider, right? So, some of the potential conflicts here, guys, is that the investor is always focusing on maximizing financial growth, while the avoider tends to ignore, their financial matters, of course. So, how they can reach common ground here is that, investor can handle the financial planning, but the avoider always needs to stay informed and be part of the key decision making. Like I said, we don't want to have a situation where one person makes all the financial decisions and the next person just needs to go with it, because that's not healthy, right? And then we also can then keep financial discussions brief and light, just to reduce stress, which is very important for the avoider, because they also don't want to associate. They already have anxiety when it comes to talking about money. So you don't want to add to that a stressful environment, or creating a stressful environment when it comes to talking about money, right? Because you want to disassociate stress when it comes to talking about money, because then it's going to help the success of your relationship. And then we have the avoider can commit to small financial habits like checking balances regularly. That's a small task that they can start doing, because you start getting them into the habit of participating in the finances of the within the relationship, right? So we delegate, we have different responsibilities, and we involve each other and make sure that it's a joint effort. That way, we're finding a balance and common ground as a couple. Okay. Now we're just going to be going through some of the tips for success. So, firstly, guys, it's always about compromise, because when you meet someone new, right? I mean, you go on a date with someone, you're not gonna be like, what is your money personality on your first date? Still nice and light, you're still talking about your favorite color, your favorite movie, right? Your childhood. You're still trying to get to know the person, establish, common ground. When we start talking about money, right, it's now that we are growing into each other, right? We have decided that actually we have common interests and we'd want to build a future together. Now we want to start talking about money, okay? And there's no right money personality. So one money personality is not superior over the other. Okay. We can't operate in that fashion. So it's important to compromise. This means that you don't need to agree with every decision that is made, but you need to be on the same page, right? And that means that sometimes there'll be decisions that are made within the relationship that you might not be happy with because you did not want things done a certain way. But you compromise, right? Compromise to get to a common ground that both of you could be happy with this particular decision. Okay. So for example, a spender says, "Hey, the long weekend, the Easter weekend is coming up. Can we go for a holiday?" And a person who is a saver is like, "No, actually, I didn't think we should go on holiday. Maybe we should go in June. No, I don't want to go on holiday. Let's rather do it in December." And the spender's like, "Yeah, but I mean, it's the perfect time. The weather's good. In June, it's cold, so going on holiday when it's cold is not really going to be enjoyable. So let's rather do it now when it's nice and warm, and we can actually have a bit of fun, right?" So that's a valid point. So the saver would then have to compromise and say, "Actually, all right, how can we save towards this little trip that we want to do?" That's compromising, guys. And then schedule money dates. Like I said, your money dates do not need to be a stressful environment. We don't need to block out Fridays as, "Oh, Fridays we're having conversations about money." Now you're going to spend the rest of your week, dreading this upcoming money, because upcoming Friday money talk, because now you're all stressed out about, "Oh, now I'm going to be questioned. Why did I buy this? Why did I buy that?" No, we have boundaries, right? We have boundaries. We have guidelines. We have fun money, where we have decided that if it's anything, below 5,000 Rand, for argument's sake, we don't need to have a conversation. Anything above 5,000 Rand, let us have a conversation about that first before we make any decision. Let's involve each other in big decisions that will impact us in the future, right? So it's important to make sure that we don't have any form of negative connotations when it comes to these little money dates. And when we are scheduling money dates, we can have them, while taking a walk. We can have them while, having ice cream, watching a movie, watching a series, taking a drive, and just making it a bit relaxing, because the conversation is already tense enough. We don't need a stressful environment to add to that. And then, of course, using tools, guys. So if we're not able to actually come up with a budget, then there are tools that are out there. We've also actually put up a lot of worksheets on our social media platforms that can help people individually and as couples be able to actually have plan for their finances. So we've got the financial planner for individuals and couples, just to help as a guideline on how to create, a plan as a couple when it comes to your finances and having joint goals, right? And the importance of it. So use tools to try and actually make the situation a little bit better, to give you a bit of guidance if you do not know where to start or how to even initiate a conversation. The tool could actually help you do that, right? And then having a respect for each other's strengths. So remember, guys, just because one person is a spender, it does not necessarily mean they don't add value, right? So we need to be able to understand that each partner brings something valuable to the financial decision making. So we need to have respect for each person's strength, and focus on the strengths and how we can find common goals when it comes to each money personality. Because in a lot of situations, people are coupled with someone who has a different money personality than they have. So it's important to make sure that you are able to actually find common ground when it comes to the financial discussions that you have within your relationship, right? And you need to be able to do that respectfully. And then, of course, defining roles and responsibilities, guys. Remember, we also want to be able to have responsibilities. Each person can be tasked with doing something within the relationship when it comes to the finances. However, we want to avoid a situation where there's one person who's seen as the money boss, because that also then creates a dynamic where an uncomfortable dynamic where it feels as if one person has a majority say on a particular decision because they make the money. And I know that contrary to popular belief, that if you are the breadwinner, then you make all the decisions. No, we are a team. Right? We are a team. We're trying to come together to build a life together. So, whatever decision that we make, we need to make it together. That is what a true partnership is about. It's not about who makes more money or who does not make money. It's about how do we come together, because just because I don't make money, right, it does not mean I don't have anything valuable to add to the conversation. So we need to avoid having those situations, right? And make sure that we respect each other and respect each other's opinions, and having roles and responsibilities is important, because that way each person feels heard and they feel part of the decision making within the relationship. And then we need to plan for the future together. But guys, I can't stress this enough. I mean, we cannot be planning a future together as a couple, right? And we're dating, and we're planning to spend the rest of our lives together, but we don't plan things together. It doesn't make sense. How are we walking a journey and we don't have a desired destination? We don't have a desired goal that we're trying to achieve together? Well, that's a recipe for disaster. So it's important to set, short and long-term goals, right? Like I said, have short, have medium, and have long-term goals. That way, you are able to actually plan towards the finances and how you want to use your finances as a couple, to also ensure that you are well prepared for situations that you cannot prepare for. That's where the emergency fund comes in. And then have a no blame approach to financial issues, right? So, this is another important one. I mean, if we've already found ourselves in this financial hole, right? One partner makes a mistake and they borrow money without consulting the other partner, and now you are stuck in this in debt, right? There's this huge debt that you need to pay off. We talk about it, we get over it, but it's not going to help anyone if we're going to keep harping over the same situation, because we're not moving forward. Ideally, in any relationship, is you always need to ask yourself, in whichever conflict you find yourself in, ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve here? Do I still want to be part of this relationship? Do I want this relationship to move forward? If the answer is yes, then we should be focusing on resolving that issue and finding a solution, because a solution moves us forward. We cannot keep harping over the problem, because that then just creates even more conflict, because now we are playing the blame game. If we are trying to find a solution and we're trying to move forward, we need to move away from the blame game, and move away from who did what and how we ended up in this situation, and focus more on how can we get ourselves out of the situation. So that is important, because that way we still remember that this is a partnership. People make mistakes, and we focus more on solving the problem rather than blaming the next person as who created the problem, right? And so I hope that really helps, and you are able to then better accommodate each other when it comes to the different money personalities, and that helps you make better financial decisions as a couple, right? And with all that said, thank you once again for taking the time to join us. And I hope that you were able to actually learn a lot. And of course, follow us on our social media platforms if you want to learn more. And thank you once again for joining us and watching this one class.